I support adoption of the committee report.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this report and the motion by the Debt Committee, and allow me to take this opportunity to commend the Honorable Shurie and all the members of the Debt Committee for the great work that they have put in. Honorable Speaker, if you go through the resolutions of the committee, because I hear what many of us are tempted to do is to speak to the gallery and not restrict ourselves to what is before the House. And I know many are tempted to speak to the gallery because they think it will excite those ones out there. But when you are elected to this House, Honorable Speaker, you are charged with the responsibility to oversight government, legislate, and also represent the people, but not to mislead the people. And Honorable Speaker, that is why I rose on points of order. When people start misleading the country that the National Infrastructure Fund is another fund for borrowing, because it is not. And those who sit in the Debt Committee will tell you. Honorable Speaker, the other lie that I have listened to is that securitization is another form of borrowing. Far from it, Honorable Speaker. It is not another form of borrowing, Honorable Speaker. Because all that you do in securitization is a conversion of your non-liquid or non-tradable assets into tradable securities, Honorable Speaker. That does not constitute borrowing, Honorable Speaker. And that is exactly why when you securitize, Honorable Speaker, you move the assets that you're doing out of your balance sheet. That is why the securitization process that you have done with your roads is not part and parcel of the balance sheet of the government of Kenya. And that is why the Trade Committee, not the Trade Committee, the Debt Committee, Honorable Speaker, will not be reporting to you on such issues as part of the borrowing of our country, because they are not part of your balance sheet. And even you as an individual, if something is not on your balance sheet, is neither an asset or a liability on your balance sheet, it cannot be part of your borrowing, Honorable Speaker, because your borrowing will be part and parcel of your liabilities on your balance sheet, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, allow me to restrict myself to the issues that have been raised by the committee, the real issues that we should be doing as a House, because the Debt Committee has done very well. And if you read their recommendations, part of what they are telling you to do, especially on public-private partnerships, is to ensure that PPPs, securitization, and other alternative financing mechanisms are fully integrated into a fiscal risk reporting and stress testing. Because that is all we need to do as a nation, to ensure that all our PPP projects, all our securitized and other alternatives forms of financing that we get into do not in any way in the future overburden our country or become a risk to our economy, Honorable Speaker. Because when you create special purpose vehicles outside of the mainstream systems, Honorable Speaker, you must also be able to test them, stress test them, as the committee is telling us. And that is the responsibility our Debt Committee and this House must carry out very well. Honorable Speaker, the other good recommendation that I saw is the call for the National Treasury to do what they call risk mitigation plan around the election cycle. Because every electoral cycle, every 5 years, Honorable Speaker, you know, our country is faced with risks around the electoral processes. And therefore, this is the right time, and I must commend Honorable Shurie and the committee for sensitizing the National Treasury and all of us that we must have risk mitigation mechanisms or plans to mitigate on risk that will be associated with the interruptions that come to, during electioneering times and during our electoral cycle, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the other recommendation, Honorable Speaker, that the committee has called on this House to do revolves around the issue of our expenditure rationalization. Because every year, and I've heard some of us say that we make recommendations that Treasury doesn't follow through. We must ensure, and the Budget and Appropriations Committee, our Public Debt Committee must help us, because this House works through committees, to ensure that there is proper rationalization of expenditure. And especially now as we run towards the elections, there are things that will come in for IBC, requirements for IBC, and other security-related issues that if we do not plan ahead of time could be a risk to our costs or expenditure rationalization plans. And therefore,
I'll add you 3 because
thank you, Honorable Speaker.
You are a former chair of budget.
Yes. And you know, when I was a former chair of budget, Honorable Speaker, even when I was removed as chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, I stood firm to ensure that I supported the regime then in ensuring that we do the right thing. And when things were not done right, I would call it out. When they were done right, I would have the fortitude and the courage and the boldness to say, this is good for the country, because we must grow beyond petty politics. Because at times we allow petty politics and anger and the desire for revenge and settling scores to override common sense. And we even allow intellectual conmanship and deceit to take center stage. And you mislead the country by speaking very good English here, or very bad English, colored in heavy words, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when we tell this country that Mwai Kibaki's budget was this much, borrowing was this much, you must ask yourself, Mwai Kibaki's regime operated under the old constitution of before 2010. They did not have the 400, almost 500 billion shillings today that you are obligated by the constitution to send to your county governments. The heavy budgetary requirements that the Uhuru Kenyatta regime and this regime beyond 2013 are confronted with are things that did not pertain when Mwai Kibaki was president, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we cannot say that when President Mwai Kibaki took over government in 2003 from the KANU regime in 2002, there weren't issues. Issues were there. But truth be told, we have a very heavy governance system in this country. And I say this because I was in this house in 2013, Honorable Speaker, when the former chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the Reverend Mutava Musimi, conducted the budget, the then huge budget committee that incorporated the Finance Committee and even the Debt Committee. It was a 51-member committee. Through a process where this house, through the Budget Committee, audited the implementation of the 2010 Constitution. And those records are here for those who care to read. So don't pontificate telling us, oh, things were here, they're here now. Mwai Kibaki was at this debt level. Be honest. Tell Kenyans that the circumstances then are not the circumstances under the 2010 Constitution. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, borrowing is not a sin. It is not. And I heard the Honorable Kwenya and the Honorable Basil say the question we must be asking ourselves as leaders, is our borrowing sustainable? Are we putting our country in borrowing that we can be able to pay? Is domestic borrowing evil? No, it is not. We just need to make sure that our domestic borrowing is well balanced. And that is what I see the committee saying, that there must be a clear balance on our domestic borrowing so that it doesn't negatively affect our CBR rate and therefore cloud out the private sector from domestic borrowing. And that is why we need the alternative financing mechanisms. That is why we need securitization. Let us not demonize securitization. Because if we do not go for those alternative modes of financing, it means we go back and borrow. Is IMF loans and World Bank loans cheaper? Yes, they are. Can we access them as quickly as we'd want to be able to finance our obligations? No, we can't. That is the truth. And those of us who have served in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, those of us who have served in the Finance Committee, know this as facts. And therefore, that's why I say, when we come and pontificate here and speak to the gallery, Honorable Speaker, again, let us be leaders. Let us not just politic. Cheap politics, at the end of the day, ends up in premium tiers, Honorable Speaker. And I want to ask those who are using these processes for cheap politics, it will end up in premium tiers, Honorable Speaker. I support the recommendations of this committee, and especially even in being able to increase how much we are putting into development expenditure. Part of that development expenditure is what will come through securitization. Otherwise, we run the risk of taxing Kenyans more or borrowing more. That balance is what we need through alternative forms of financing. And So long as it's done responsibly, as the debt committee is asking us to do, so long as we balance how we borrow domestically and externally, and whether it's commercial or concessional loans, Honorable Speaker, we are good.
Honorable Njikumuya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to stand and say the committee has done a good job in its report and in all recommendations.